Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I know many of you use these videos to relax or fall asleep, so before we begin, take a deep breath, get comfortable, and settle in. Don't forget to like the video, and subscribe, it helps more than you know. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. Tonight's case is deeply disturbing, filled with tragedy, loss, and chilling moments that haunted an entire community. Listener discretion is advised. Case 1, Hillsborough County Tragedy, March 18th, 2018. It was the night of March 18th, 2018. The time was 11:43 p.m. when the emergency line at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office rang. The dispatcher on duty answered, only to be met with static and a sense of dread that prickled at their skin. Before they could understand the nature of the call, the line went dead. 6 minutes passed. Then, at 11:49 p.m., the phone rang again. This time, a man spoke, his voice calm, eerily so. He reported an emergency and gave the address, 13,248 Peak Lake Road. Officers were dispatched immediately. As patrol cars arrived, something felt off. Smoke was already rising from the house. Within minutes, fire had engulfed the home in a violent blaze. Flames clawed through the structure, and firefighters rushed in to contain the inferno. But what they saw on the front lawn stopped them in their tracks. There stood a man, his body drenched in blood. Not far from him, a woman lay motionless, her body riddled with wounds. Officers ordered the man to the ground. He didn't comply. Instead, he stumbled forward, muttering to himself, eyes blank. Officers were forced to use a taser to subdue him. As he hit the ground, he repeated two chilling phrases, Allahu Akbar, KK is the devil. The kids are the devil's children. 2. The smell of gasoline clung to him. His hands were slick with blood. The woman on the lawn, was she still alive? Officers rushed to check. Her body was soaked in blood, torn by deep wounds. She was long gone. Then, from the house, a small boy emerged. He was clutching his stomach, blood streaming through his fingers. In a whisper, he said, "My dad shot my mom." Then he collapsed. The fire and discovery. As paramedics rushed the child to the hospital, firefighters learned another child was still inside. One firefighter, Donald, didn't hesitate. He charged into the blaze. The heat was unbearable. The house reeked of accelerants. In a bedroom, Donald found her, a little girl, lying lifeless on the floor. He rushed to her side, but the moment he touched her, he knew she was gone. When Donald emerged, carrying her in his arms, he broke down. Even after countless calls and tragedies, this one shattered him. Once the fire was out, investigators combed through the wreckage. What they found was horrifying. A broken shotgun, a blood-soaked axe, a blood-stained knife, an empty gas can. Blood was everywhere on walls, floors, furniture. What had once been a home was now a crime scene drenched in violence. Victims identified. The woman on the lawn was identified as Kenyatta Kiki Barron, 33 years old. The girl inside the house was her daughter, Ronanevia O'Neill, just 9. Kenyatta had been shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the elbow. But that wasn't what killed her. Her skull was fractured in several places. Her body showed signs of extreme trauma, including broken teeth. It was a violent, drawn-out death, but Ronanevia's fate was even more tragic. She had been repeatedly struck in the head with a sharp object axe. Experts say it was a level of brutality they could barely comprehend. This wasn't just murder. It was torture. The sole survivor, the boy who survived the son of Kenyatta, and the suspect was Ronnie O'Neill, just 8 years old. He had been stabbed and burned. Over 25% of his body was covered in severe burns. He lost so much blood that doctors believed he wouldn't survive the night. But somehow, he did. He fought through surgeries, endured unspeakable pain, and lived to tell the story. The suspect, Ronnie O'Neill III, The man standing bloodied on the lawn was Ronnie O'Neill III, Kenyatta's ex-partner, just months before the murder. In October 2017, Ronnie had been shot in broad daylight. After recovering, he was abandoned by his family and turned away by his girlfriend. With nowhere left to go, he reached out to Kenyatta. Despite their past, Kenyatta took him in. She helped him recover. She had no idea she was welcoming death into her home. Witness accounts and escalating tension. Neighbors reported that everything changed when Ronnie moved in. The once quiet home became filled with arguments and violent outbursts. James Gray, a nearby resident, said he overheard shouting that night. When he stepped outside, he saw Ronnie dragging Kenyatta's body and holding what looked like a shotgun. When James called out, Ronnie yelled, "You wouldn't understand. She wanted to kill me. Allahu Akbar." Forensic evidence. The forensic evidence was damning. The axe matched the wounds on Ron. Nivea, the shotgun damaged intentionally, had fired the bullets that struck Kenyatta. The knife had the blood of the 8-year-old boy. All weapons bore Ronnie's fingerprints. Gasoline was found throughout the house. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Ronnie denied everything. Ronnie's defense in later interviews, Ronnie claimed he had acted in self. He accused Kenyatta of attacking him, of harming their children. He claimed, "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just used too much force." He said he was protecting his kids, but the evidence told a different story. He had no injuries, no bruises, scratches, or cuts. Kenyatta and the children bore all the wounds, the most crucial witness. But it wasn't just forensics that sealed Ronnie's fate. It was the voice of his own son in a heartbreaking testimony. The boy described waking up to hear his parents arguing about religion. He saw his father holding a shotgun. He watched his mother run into his sister's room and try to hide. Then, he said, "Dad made me shout, 'Allah is the greatest.' Then he shot my mom. He grabbed my hand and made me pull the trigger. Then he went after Renavia with an axe." The boy had witnessed everything and survived. Conclusion: Ronnie O'Neill III was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, arson, and child abuse. The evidence was overwhelming. The survivor's testimony was devastating. The trial became infamous, especially after Ronnie chose to represent himself in court, delivering erratic statements and denying all wrongdoing. But justice, eventually, was served. Closing soft, calm tone, what began as a second chance ended in a horrifying betrayal. Kenyatta welcomed him into her home out of compassion. Her kindness was repaid with fire, blood, and devastation. And yet through it all, a child survived. A child whose courage helped bring the truth to light. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me. This case is one of the most difficult stories I've ever told. If you found it meaningful, please like the video, subscribe, and let me know what case you'd like me to cover next. Until then, stay safe. Good night. The Crime Whisper, the Ronnie O'Neill case, a story of tragedy, horror, and survival. Narrator.com tone. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight's case is one of the most devastating stories of domestic violence, deception, and survival ever seen in the state of Florida. It involves a man who committed unthinkable acts against the very people who once gave him shelter and love. And at the heart of this tragedy is an 8-year-old boy. Ronnie O'Neill's claims and police doubt from the very beginning. Ronnie O'Neill III insisted he was the victim. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was protecting my children. My instincts as a father took over." He even cited his own 911 call as proof, stating, "In the second call, I said Kiki wanted to kill me. That shows I was defending myself." But investigators weren't convinced. The evidence spoke volumes, and it contradicted everything Ronnie said. If Kenyatta Barron, the mother of his children, was the aggressor, why was she the one who had been shot? If he acted in self-defense, why pour gasoline around the home and set it ablaze? If she harmed the children, why were Ronnie's fingerprints found on every single weapon? When police arrested Ronnie, they found no visible injuries on him. No bruises, no scratches, nothing to suggest he had been attacked, but on his body, traces of his own children's blood, and of Kenyatta's character, and the lies that followed to those who knew Kenyatta. The accusations made by Ronnie were beyond belief. She was described by friends and neighbors as a devoted mother, gentle, loving, never violent, and yet, Ronnie clung to the narrative that he had no choice, that his actions were somehow justified. But there was one witness Ronnie hadn't counted on: his own son, the boy he attacked, the boy he tried to silence, the boy who lived. Little Ronnie's testimony the night of the attack. The police listened quietly as the 8-year-old known as Little Ronnie described that horrific night. Each word struck with the weight of trauma. I was asleep. I heard my parents fighting, screaming about religion. Then I heard a loud crash. I got scared and opened my door. He paused, shaking, before continuing. I saw Dad. He had a shotgun pointed at Mom. She yelled at me to go back to my room, then ran into Renavia's room and hid in the closet. Dad made me stand in the hallway. He forced me to say, "Allah is the greatest." I was scared, so I said it. Then came the gunshot. Mom came stumbling out, bleeding everywhere. Then Dad made me grab the gun. He put my hand on it. He forced me to pull the trigger on my own mom. The boy's voice broke. He choked on his words. His eyes welled with tears. She tried to run outside. I thought he'd stop, but he chased her, shot her again. The horror wasn't over. Then he came back, this time with an axe. He dragged my sister out. She was crying, screaming, but he didn't care. He just kept hitting her. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Little Ronnie could barely finish, but what he said was more than enough. His words matched the evidence perfectly. The weapons, the wounds, the blood, the attempt to kill his son after killing Kenyatta and Renavia. Ronnie turned to his son. He struck the boy hard in the stomach. In desperation, the child fled to the kitchen, but Ronnie followed. He grabbed a knife and stabbed him. Then, as the house went up in flames, the boy, bleeding and burned, crawled to the front of the house. When officers arrived, they found him collapsing, gasping for breath. "My dad shot my mom," were his final words before passing out. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, and miraculously he survived. The truth behind the 911 calls: Ronnie had made 2 calls to 911. In the first, Kenyatta's screams could be heard in the background. By the second call, she was already dead. "Kiki wanted to kill me," Ronnie said again and again. But to detectives, it wasn't a cry for help. It was a carefully crafted lie. He wanted to frame himself as the victim, to establish a defense before the bodies were even cold. Throughout the case, one chilling phrase kept resurfacing: "Allah is the greatest." Why had he forced his son to say it while committing these acts? Some investigators speculated that religion may have played a role in the motive. Perhaps Ronnie had pressured Kenyatta to convert to Islam. She refused. Mental illness or manipulation. Once charged, Ronnie didn't go quietly. He suddenly claimed he was mentally unfit to stand trial. He said he suffered from PTSD. He'd been abused as a child, shot in a separate incident, and was now mentally unstable. Psychologist Dr. Milan initially supported this claim, but it didn't hold up. Dr. Milan had never even spoken directly to Ronnie, only to his family. Her evaluation was rejected in court. The other experts agreed. Ronnie was competent. His actions showed planning, deception, and cruelty. He had called 911. He had tried to stage a narrative. He had tried to destroy evidence. He had tried to kill the only surviving witness. That's not someone out of control. That's someone making calculated choices. The trial, representing himself against all advice. Ronnie chose to represent himself in court. He ignored the judge's repeated warnings. He believed his own words could save him. From the first day of trial, it was clear he was spiraling. He claimed the prosecutors tampered with evidence. He accused police of staging the 911 calls. He insisted his son was traumatized and couldn't be trusted. "We live under a corrupt government," he shouted in court. No one believed him. Confronting his son in court, but then came the most haunting moment of all. Ronnie cross-examined his own son. The boy sat bravely on the witness stand, facing the man who had tried to kill him. Ronnie asked, "Did I hurt you?" The boy replied, steady but broken, "Yes, you stabbed me in the stomach." The courtroom went silent. In that moment, there was no more deflecting, no more pretending. Ronnie was exposed. Verdict and sentencing. The jury needed little time to decide. On July 23, 2021, Ronnie O'Neill III was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole and additional 90 years in prison. He will never walk free again. Judge Michelle Cisco delivered a powerful message. "In my 19 years on the bench, I've seen many horrific cases, but this, this is the worst. The cruelty, the violence, the sheer inhumanity. There is no forgiveness for what you've done." Ronnie appealed his conviction. It was denied. Aftermath, the survivor, and what of little Ronnie? He was just 8 years old when this nightmare unfolded. He lost his mother, his sister, his sense of safety. He nearly lost his life, but somehow, he survived. When he first arrived at the hospital, he was alone. No family came to visit. No one to comfort him. His story touched the hearts of the officers who responded that night. One man, in particular, couldn't forget the boy's face, Detective Mike Blair. Mike wasn't assigned to the case, but he became a regular visitor. He sat by the boy's hospital bed, offering what comfort he could. And when little Ronnie was discharged and placed into foster care, Mike and his wife made a decision that would change both their lives. They adopted him. Closingwords.com. And soft out of unimaginable darkness came a single light. Little Ronnie didn't just survive. He found a new home and a new family. What happened that night on Peak Lake Road can never be erased. But through courage, truth, and compassion, justice was served on. A child's life was saved. If you found this story meaningful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're watching from. Until next time, stay safe, and good night. The Crime Whisper episode, a father's betrayal, and a locked room death. Closing words of Case 1. Ronnie O'Neill. Detective Mike Blair had made a promise to be there for the boy who had lost everything, and he kept it. Not long after little Ronnie entered foster care, Child Protective Services called Mike in desperation. The boy was struggling, unable to adjust to his temporary home. They needed help fast. Mike didn't hesitate. "Bring him to my house," he said. He hadn't even spoken to his wife Danielle yet, but he knew her heart. And when he told her, she opened her arms without hesitation. Still, adopting little Ronnie wasn't a simple decision. The boy bore not just the physical scars of deep burns that required numerous surgeries, but the invisible wounds of trauma and loss. Mike and Danielle already had 5 children of their own. Welcoming a child who had experienced so much pain was daunting, but they knew it was the right thing to do. On November 25, 2019, after months of legal steps, Ronnie Blair became part of their family. During Ronnie O'Neill's trial, he tried to twist this act of love into a weapon. He accused the Blairs of manipulating his son, claiming the adoption was part of a conspiracy against him. But when Ronnie cross-examined his own child in court, the boy answered with unwavering strength, "No, they didn't tell me what to say. You hurt my mom, you hurt my sister, and you hurt me." Mike Blair never spoke to his son about the case again. He didn't need to. His mission wasn't to dwell on the past. It was to give Ronnie a future. Today, thanks to the love of a family who stepped in when it mattered most, Ronnie Blair is healing body and soul from the ashes of tragedy. He found something powerful. Hope Case 2. The locked room death of Hughes. Narrator shifts tone. Mysterious, intriguing. Our second story tonight takes us to San Francisco, into a locked apartment, a puzzling crime scene, and a conclusion that left a family fighting for justice. It was Friday, June 1st, 2007, in the Hayes Valley district of San Francisco. The night air was buzzing with weekend energy. For Hughes, a 36-year-old Frenchman and beloved audio engineer at Leapfrog, life couldn't have been better. He had just been promoted and given a raise. His friends affectionately called him Brother Hughes for his good humor and boundless warmth. That night, Hughes celebrated at Underground SF, a bar downtown. He danced, laughed, and raised a glass with friends. A photo captured him, mid-danced, hat on, drink in hand, glowing with joy. No one imagined it would be the last photo ever taken of him. By 2 a.m., the bar was closing. Hughes told his friends he planned to continue the night with a woman he'd just met. He reminded them about their motorcycle ride planned for the next morning, and then he walked home alone. It was just a 10-minute walk to his apartment at 462 Linden Street. Discovery of the crime scene. At 8:10 a.m., a neighbor named Carl noticed something unusual. Blood smeared along the building's front steps. A chill ran through him. He immediately called 911. The San Francisco police arrived quickly. Following a trail of blood to Hughes's apartment, they found both front and back doors locked from the inside. No one answered. Officers broke in through the back door. What they found was horrifying. The apartment was a scene of utter chaos: broken glass, a toppled TV, tangled electrical cords, and blood everywhere. There were desperate scratch marks on the walls, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Hughes was slumped against the bedroom wall in a pool of dried blood. He was dead. The coroner placed the time of death between 2:30 and 3 a.m., just an hour after Hughes had left the bar. No sign of a struggle or an intruder as detectives combed through the scene. One fact stood out immediately. Nothing was stolen. Hughes's wallet, phone, laptop, untouched. His keys were still inside. The doors were locked, the windows sealed. It was as if the room had swallowed him whole. And then came another puzzle. All the bloody footprints belonged to Hughes. There was no DNA from anyone else. His blood droplets trailed calmly from room to room, as though he had been moving slowly, perhaps searching for help or preparing to die. The autopsy revealed 3 deep stab wounds, all on the left side of his body. One in the abdomen, one in the chest, and one in the neck. His left lung was pierced, and the neck wound had severed a major artery. That was the fatal blow. Curiously, his left hand clutched a tuft of curly black hair, about 10 strands each, less than 2 inches long. Was it a sign of a struggle? An attacker? But DNA testing showed something strange. The hair belonged to Hughes himself. Police conclusion: suicide, despite the bizarre and violent nature of his injuries. The San Francisco Police Department quickly ruled the case a suicide. They pointed to a quote found in Hughes's journal: "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." They claimed it was a hidden suicide note, that Hughes, intoxicated and in a hallucinatory state after partying, stabbed himself 3 times, locked the doors, and waited for death to Hughes's family and friends. This conclusion was insulting. Loved ones pushed back. Hughes was on the cusp of turning 37. He was thriving in his career. He had just gotten a raise. He was planning a motorcycle ride with friends the next morning, and he had no known history of mental illness. His ex-girlfriend, Melissa Nix, devastated by the news, immediately flew to San Francisco. She remembered Hughes as vibrant, optimistic, and full of life. When she and Hughes's parents visited the police department, they were met with indifference. The lead investigator even suggested Hughes may have committed seppuku ritual Japanese suicide because of his interest in Japanese culture. Melissa was furious. This wasn't a ritual. This wasn't suicide. You just don't want to investigate, she told them. A fight for truth. Melissa was a journalist. She knew the power of public pressure. She began gathering support friends, colleagues, Hughes's family, anyone who knew the truth. Hughes would not have taken his own life. Meanwhile, Hughes's parents, still in mourning, hired a private investigator nicknamed the Columbus of California, with more than 25 years of experience. He specialized in solving cold and questionable cases. Together, they launched their own investigation, because something about that locked apartment just didn't add up. To be continued in the next episode of The Crime Whisper. We'll follow Melissa and the private investigator as they unravel the hidden truths behind Hughes's death. What really happened that night? Did someone else enter the apartment? And if so, how did they leave without a trace? Stay tuned. The Crime Whisper, Case 2. The Locked Room Mystery of Hughes' narrator voice, reflective, suspenseful. With over 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 cases to his name, the private investigator hired by Hughes's grieving family would uncover a very different story, one that stood in stark contrast to the official conclusion of suicide. The image painted by San Francisco police was of a man who spiraled into depression and took his own life in a sealed apartment. But what the investigator revealed was something else entirely. A life worth living. Hughes was no ordinary man, quietly slipping through life. A successful audio engineer. He earned over $70,000 a year and had nearly $100,000 in savings. Planning to purchase property in Argentina, just 2 weeks before his death, he'd been promoted at work and given a raise. That Friday night in 2007, Hughes had gone out to celebrate with friends. He was vibrant, smiling, optimistic. Before leaving the bar, he reminded his best friend about their motorcycle ride planned for the next morning. He had also arranged to meet a fellow French friend that weekend. Nothing about his behavior suggested suicidal intent. Uncovering the hidden life, but as the investigator dug deeper, he discovered secrets Hughes had kept even from his closest friends. After breaking up with Melissa, his longtime partner, Hughes had begun living a more reckless lifestyle, avoiding committed relationships, seeking out casual encounters, and frequenting adult sites and chat platforms. On the night of his death, he had reportedly used drugs and talked openly about spending the night with a woman, possibly a stranger. This detail, combined with his residence on Linden Street, an area known for sex work and drug activity, raised red flags. Could Hughes have crossed paths with someone dangerous that night? Contradictions in the official report. The coroner's report from the San Francisco police shocked the investigator. Despite police claims of drug-induced hallucinations, no traces of drugs were found in Hughes's system, only alcohol. Even more troubling, the 2 steak knives allegedly used in the suicide had no blood on their blades, only faint red smears on the handles. The blood later turned out to be tomato sauce. The inconsistencies piled up. The autopsy misreported Hughes's height at 5 feet 9. He was actually 6 feet tall. It also claimed he was circumcised. He was not. And Hughes, a karate enthusiast with a strong build, had no defensive wounds, despite the brutal nature of the attack. Most disturbing of all, the tuft of black curly hair clutched in Hughes's hand. Potential DNA evidence was never tested. It later disappeared. A new theory emerges. Working with Hughes's father, Francois, the investigator developed a new theory based on crime scene photos and the layout of the apartment. They proposed that Hughes had returned home, possibly expecting company. He opened the door and was attacked, stabbed 3 times. During the struggle, he managed to grab a handful of his assailant's hair. Bleeding, he staggered inside, locked the door behind him, and eventually collapsed. Unable to cry out due to the neck wound, the killer may have escaped over a side fence, bypassing cameras, but the police had washed the front steps before evidence could be collected. No samples were preserved. Their explanation: They wanted to avoid alarming neighbors, public pressure, and international action. By December 2007, facing mounting public criticism, San Francisco police reclassified the case as a death of unknown cause. Some speculated this was politically motivated. Hughes, a foreigner with no local family, wasn't seen as a high-priority case. Reclassifying his death also helped keep the city's crime statistics low convenient during an election cycle, but Hughes's parents refused to give up. They hired a French attorney and took the case to the High Court of Paris, prompting a rare international move. In 2008, French investigators were dispatched to San Francisco, marking the first time foreign law enforcement had intervened on American soil in a civilian case. Blocked at every turn, the French team was met with cold resistance. The SFPD initially refused to release case files. Most original detectives had retired. Francois had to involve the French embassy and contact authorities in Washington before the documents were finally released. Once granted access, the French investigators conducted a full review interviewing over 50 people, analyzing Hughes' phone and laptop, and rebuilding the timeline of his final day, reconstructing the final hours. June 1st. Hughes arrived at work, chatted with co-workers. 5 p.m. He returned home, showered, and went on a date at an art gallery. After 10 p.m., he met friends at a bar. 2:16 a.m., a security camera captured Hughes walking home. 2:20 a.m., he logged onto real estate websites, social media, and an adult site. He made a phone call to a friend, mentioning plans to find drugs and a woman for the night. 2:40 a.m., his laptop suddenly disconnected. Shortly after, neighbors reported hearing a door slam, hurried footsteps, and a loud thud, then silence, vanishing. Evidenced by the time French authorities arrived. The crime scene was compromised. The steak knives were ruled out. They weren't the murder weapon. The blood on the watch strap wasn't. Hughes indicating someone else had been present. The hair sample Hughes clutched was gone. A critical side door, unmonitored by cameras, may have been used as an escape route. The garage surveillance camera, once thought to be reliable, only captured still frames every 4 seconds, allowing a fast-moving figure to go completely unnoticed. The final report, a 15-day investigation. The French police released a 2,000-page report concluding Hughes had been murdered. The cause of death was officially changed to homicide, but no one was arrested. The SFPD claimed there wasn't enough evidence to compel a suspect to submit DNA. Craig, a shadowy neighbor in 2009, Francois offered a $100,000 reward, prompting new leads. One anonymous caller pointed to Craig, a neighbor with a violent past. He had once been part of the PCP gang, involved in drugs and weapons trafficking. Neighbors recalled Craig and Hughes clashing over parking spots. Screams and threats were heard coming from Craig's apartment, but Craig had an alibi and his weapon, a cable cutter, didn't match the stab wounds. Shortly after the murder, Craig disappeared, becoming homeless. The private investigator tried to locate him for years. Eventually, Francois convinced Craig to meet and offered to pay for a DNA test, but the results were never disclosed. Melissa's fight for truth, meanwhile, Melissa Nix, Hughes' ex-girlfriend, became a tireless advocate for the case. Her persistence led to the San Francisco police reopening the investigation, albeit quietly. In recognition of her work, Melissa received the James Madison Award for Investigative Integrity. To this day, she updates Hughes' memorial Facebook page. In November 2021, she wrote, "The case remains open. Theories that linger. 2 dominant theories remain. A drug deal gone wrong. Hughes was targeted by a dealer or gang member familiar with the area, who attacked him and escaped unnoticed. Mistaken identity or revenge. Hughes may have been mistakenly killed in place of someone else, possibly Craig, or the killer realized they'd struck the wrong man and silenced Hughes to cover it up." 18 years later today, 62 Linden Street is surrounded by a tall security fence, but in 2007, it was a place of shadows where one young man's vibrant future ended far too soon. Hughes's story is one of contradictions, missteps, and perseverance. His loved ones continue to seek the truth. His father, Francois, has vowed, "I will never stop looking. I will never give up hope." Closing words over the years. The case has been a painful reminder of how easily justice can slip away. But it also shows the power of love, memory, and relentless pursuit. A father, a former lover, a team of determined outsiders, all unwilling to let Hughes be forgotten. Though his killer remains at large, his story still echoes, and we will keep whispering it. The Crime Whisper, Case 3, The Nanny, The Husband, and the knifenarrator.com/serious tone. It started like a scene out of a suburban dream. An accomplished couple, a beautiful home, a sweet little girl, and a live-in nanny they treated like family. But by February 2023, that dream had unraveled into a crime scene. A woman lay dying, a man was shot dead, and what first seemed like a tragic home invasion would soon turn into one of the most chilling and complex murder cases in Virginia's recent history. Part 1. A picture-perfect life. Christine Banfield was a woman who seemed to have it all. Born in 1985, she enrolled at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut in 2003 to pursue her dream of becoming a nurse. There, in her first year, she met a young man named Brendan Robert Banfield, and the two quickly began dating. Christine graduated in 2007, and by 2010, the couple was married. She was 24, he was 25. They lived a good life, comfortable, successful, and from the outside, deeply in love. Christine worked long 16-hour shifts as a nurse, a job she was passionate about. Brendan, on the other hand, worked as a federal agent for the IRS, focusing on tax evasion cases. Despite their intense careers, the two found time for each other, often going to the gym together, taking vacations, and posting about their life as a happy couple online. By 2018, their family grew. On March 30th of that year, Christine gave birth to their daughter. Christine, ever the proud mother, filled her social media with pictures of her daughter and husband. Friends described them as a united team, high-achieving professionals, and loving parents. They eventually settled down in Herndon, Virginia, a quiet city in Fairfax County, where they purchased a beautiful $1 million home in one of the city's best neighborhoods. Part 2. The Nanny Exchange. In 2019, the Banfields joined the Au Pair program, an international exchange initiative that brings young caregivers, mostly women from abroad, to live with host families and care for their children. Their first au pair was Amanda, a Brazilian woman who bonded deeply with the Banfields. Amanda was with the family for nearly 2 years and even stayed an additional 6 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. When she eventually got married in the US in September 2021, the Banfields played a big role. Christine's daughter was even the flower girl. Christine often referred to Amanda as part of the family. After Amanda moved away with her new husband, the Banfields searched for a new caregiver, and once again, Christine specifically wanted someone from Brazil. That's how they found Juliana Perez Magalhães, a 23-year-old nurse from São Paulo. Juliana arrived in late 2021, just as Amanda was leaving, and while her bond with the family wasn't as deep as Amanda's, it was still strong enough that the Banfields extended her contract for a second year. Part 3. A morning like no other. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, everything changed. At 7:50 a.m., a 911 call came from Juliana's phone, but it lasted only seconds and was abruptly cut off. 13 minutes later, another call came in. This time, Juliana told dispatchers that her friend had been injured. Moments later, Brendan Banfield got on the line, breathless and panicked. He told the operator that he had found his wife stabbed in the bedroom and that he had shot a man inside the house. Police arrived within 10 minutes. Inside the Banfield home, officers found a horrific scene. Christine Banfield lay gravely injured upstairs. A man later identified as Joseph Ryan, 38, was dead on the floor. The Banfield's 4-year-old daughter was also inside the home, physically unharmed. Christine was rushed to the hospital, clinging to life. She didn't make it. Brendan was also treated for a leg wound, but the biggest questions were just beginning. Who was Joseph Ryan, and what had just happened inside the Banfield home? Part 4. The stories don't match at first. It sounded like a tragic case of home invasion turned deadly. Brendan and Juliana both told police the same thing. Joseph Ryan had broken in, stabbed Christine, and was shot in self-defense by Brendan. Juliana claimed she had arrived at the home that morning for work, witnessed Ryan breaking in, and panicked. She said she called Brendan, who wasn't home at the time, and waited outside the house for him to arrive. When Brendan got there, they both entered, found Christine stabbed upstairs, and then encountered Joseph Ryan still inside the house. Brendan then allegedly grabbed the gun from inside the home and shot Ryan multiple times. But the police had questions. Why had Juliana called 911 from inside the house if she claimed she was outside waiting for Brendan? And if this was a home invasion, why? Were there no signs of forced entry? 4 months, police remained tight-lipped, conducting an intense investigation behind closed doors. Meanwhile, neighbors noticed something odd. Juliana was still seen regularly at the Banfield house, often spending time with the couple's daughter. Part 5. Secrets begin to surface by August 2023. Juliana posted publicly that she was looking for a new nanny job in the area. According to the rules of the au pair program, participants are not allowed to seek other employments, suggesting that Juliana had officially left the program. Behind the scenes, detectives were making progress. They re-examined forensic evidence and reviewed the timeline of events, and what they discovered shocked everyone. Part 6. A killer among them. In October 2023, Juliana Perez was arrested and reportedly stunned by the charges. The police had concluded that she, not Brendan, had been the one who shot Joseph Ryan. More than that, they now believed Brendan hadn't even arrived at the house when the shooting happened. According to new forensic evidence and timeline analysis, Juliana had been alone with Joseph and Christine. Brendan's version of events, claiming he pulled the trigger, was now seen as a deliberate lie, possibly intended to protect Juliana, who was in the US on a temporary visa. Juliana was charged with second-degree murder and booked into the Fairfax County Detention Center. Shockingly, public opinion initially supported her. Many believed she had acted in defense of Christine, a woman who had trusted her like family. Others believed Brendan had confessed to protect Juliana from deportation or imprisonment. But then came a disturbing twist. Part 7. Were they lovers? Authorities revealed that Christine and Joseph Ryan knew each other. In fact, there were no signs of forced entry, indicating Christine had let Joseph in. The working theory that Joseph and Christine may have had a romantic relationship, a theory partially supported by Juliana's own comments to her mother in Brazil. Juliana allegedly told her mother that Joseph had killed Christine because of a misunderstanding, implying that emotions or jealousy may have played a role. But this clashed with Juliana's original police statement, where she claimed Joseph forced his way in and attacked Christine without warning. So what was the truth? Was this a love triangle gone wrong? Or was it something even darker, a conspiracy, a betrayal, and a cover-up involving people who were once as close as family? The questions that remain as of now. Juliana's trial is still pending. Brendan has not been charged with any crime, but remains under scrutiny for potentially misleading investigators. And the biggest mystery remains unresolved. What was Joseph Ryan doing in that house? Did Christine know he was coming? And why did she end up dead? Narrator. Somber tone, $1 million home, a close-knit family, two nannies, and a brutal stabbing that destroyed it all. The story of Christine Banfield's murder is more than just a crime. It's a tangled web of secrets, silence, and suspicion. And as this case moves to trial, we may finally learn the truth, or we may not, because in this case, almost everyone is hiding something. The Crime Whisper Case 3, The Nanny, The Husband, and the Knife Part 2. A House of Secrets narrator.com. Investigative tone. Just when the dust seemed to settle, the Banfield murder case unraveled into something far more disturbing at first. It looked like a brutal but simple crime. An intruder named Joseph Ryan stabs a woman, is shot dead by her husband, and a devoted nanny caught in the middle tries to help. But by the fall of 2023, that narrative had started to collapse under the weight of mounting contradictions and explosive new evidence. The woman once seen as a loyal caregiver, Juliana Perez, had been arrested and charged with murder. But even that was just the beginning. The hidden ties and secret affairs detectives soon discovered that Juliana and Joseph Ryan may have known each other before the crime, whether through the family, a social encounter, or digital interaction remained unclear, but it was enough to warrant deeper scrutiny. And then, a bombshell dropped. Months before her arrest, Juliana had posted on social media that she was in a relationship with an American man. That man, it turned out, was none other than Brendan Banfield, Christine's husband. Suddenly, the once inspirational story of a heroic nanny defending her employer shifted into something darker. Affair, betrayal, murder. Theories flood the internet's news spread. The public's perception of Juliana shifted rapidly. Former supporters, those who saw her as a brave young woman caught in a tragic situation, began to doubt her innocence. Several theories emerged online. Theory 1. Juliana and Brendan were lovers who plotted Christine's murder to avoid a messy divorce and asset split. Theory 2. Christine had grown suspicious of an affair and hired Joseph Ryan, a private investigator, to catch them in the act. Things escalated. Theory 3. Christine and Joseph were romantically involved, and Brendan caught them together, then killed them in a fit of rage, with Juliana helping him cover it up. As outlandish as some of these theories seemed, they were fueled by silence from investigators and layers of confusing testimony. Juliana's mother speaks. Out in a Brazilian newspaper interview, Juliana's mother defended her daughter. She claimed Juliana had intended to return to Brazil soon to renew her visa, and dismissed the internet rumors as defamatory nonsense. "My daughter would never hurt anyone," she insisted. But the courtroom was telling a different story. Testimony, a different version of events. In her first hearing, Juliana offered a version of the morning that contradicted earlier statements. According to her, Christine had planned to meet Joseph Ryan alone, after giving Juliana and the child tickets to the zoo. She claimed Christine had met Joseph online through a fetish-focused dating site, but Juliana said she'd forgotten the child's lunch and returned to the house. As she pulled into the driveway, she saw a strange car and a man she didn't recognize Joseph entering the home. Fearing a break-in, she called Brendan. When Brendan arrived, they entered the house together. She made a panicked 911 call, but hung up, unsure what to say. According to Juliana, they found Christine upstairs, naked, with Joseph on top of her, holding a knife. Brendan pulled a gun and warned Joseph to back off. Joseph allegedly refused, and began stabbing Christine. Brendan fired, missing several times. In desperation, he shouted to Juliana to retrieve his second gun from a bathroom safe. She did, but instead of handing it to him, she shot Joseph herself, hitting him fatally in the chest. That, she said, was the truth. But the prosecution had a different story. The prosecutors told a very different tale. They believed Juliana and Brendan had been having an affair for months, and the murder was premeditated. Joseph Ryan, they claimed, was lured to the Banfield house through a fake dating profile made by Brendan or Juliana, pretending to be Christine. They used Christine's laptop to create the profile, engage with Joseph, and set up the meeting. The supposed messages shown to Christine's family didn't sound like her writing. Something was off. Her tone, her style, the grammar. It wasn't her. The prosecutors alleged the entire scene was staged. Joseph brought the knife because the fake Christine had requested it, citing a fetish that made it convenient when they needed to stage the break-in and frame Joseph for Christine's murder. The gun, the ranch, and the safe shooting range employee testified that Brendan and Juliana had visited the range 2 months before the murder. A month before the killing, Brendan returned alone and purchased a Glock pistol for $558.50. That very gun, the prosecution claimed, was the one Juliana used to kill Joseph Ryan. The same gun from the bathroom safe. They also revealed that for days before the murder, Brendan and Juliana had swapped phones allegedly to confuse investigators and erase evidence. And after the crime, photos showed that Juliana's belongings had been moved from her guest room into Brendan's master bedroom. The walls, once adorned with pictures of Christine and Brendan, had been updated with photos of Brendan, Juliana, and the daughter, Christine, and Brendan's toxic marriage. The defense argued that the Banfields' marriage wasn't perfect. Both Christine and Brendan had affairs. They said Brendan and Juliana may have had a relationship, but it wasn't serious. But then Brendan took the stand and invoked the Fifth Amendment. He refused to answer any question that might incriminate him. It didn't help his case. The arrest of Brendan Banfield in September 16, 2024. After months of building a case, police finally arrested Brendan Banfield. He was charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of both Christine and Joseph Ryan, as well as use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Authorities didn't disclose every piece of evidence they had, but they did reveal one key detail. Brendan and Juliana had booked a trip to Brazil. The turn in the case, Juliana's plea deal. Brendan's trial was scheduled for February 2025. Juliana's was set for November 12th of the same year, but in late October 2024, everything changed. Juliana agreed to a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter and agreed to testify against Brendan at trial. Her sentencing would be delayed until after Brendan's trial, so that her cooperation and credibility could be fully assessed. The confession. How the murder was orchestrated in her confession. Juliana laid it all out. The affair with Brendan began in August 22 to by fall 2023. Brendan was talking openly about getting rid of Christine. He created a fake profile for Christine on an adult fetish site and began communicating with Joseph Ryan as her. Brendan asked Joseph to bring a knife and other items, claiming Christine was into BDSM play. A few days before the meeting, Juliana made a voice call to Joseph, pretending to be Christine to seal the illusion. On the morning of February 24, 2023, Brendan gave Juliana a gun and told her what to do. When Joseph arrived, Juliana followed the plan. She called Christine, knowing the call would go to voicemail because Brendan had turned off her phone earlier that morning and hidden it in a drawer. She then called Brendan, pretending to be panicked. The rest of the timeline was carefully orchestrated, from the positioning of the bodies, to the sequence of 911 calls, to the fabricated story. Final Revelations Forensics supported much of Juliana's confession. Blood spatter analysis showed that both Joseph and Christine's bodies had been moved before paramedics arrived. Joseph's arms were crossed in a way that suggested he was staged, not collapsed naturally. A paramedic on scene said Brendan never asked about Christine's condition, only whether Joseph was still alive. A detail prosecutors said showed he was worried about Joseph revealing the truth. Joseph Ryan, according to his friends, had never spoken to Christine on the phone, only texts. Authorities believe he never knew he was being catfished by her husband. Conclusion. A deadly plan. What began as a seemingly straightforward case of home invasion turned out to be a meticulously planned and chillingly executed murder plot. Testimony may determine whether Brendan Banfield, once seen as a grieving husband, in fact, a calculating killer who used deception, manipulation, and murder to get what he wanted. Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan are gone. The truth is only just beginning to surface, and in the end, justice may depend on whether the court believes Juliana's final confession or sees it as yet another performance in a web of lies. Part 4. The Death of Mike Matscholt. Mike Matscholt was born on August 20th, 1998, in Oldenburg, Germany, a peaceful city of over 160,000 people. He was the son of Baron and Suzanne Matscholt. His family was well off, which allowed him a comfortable and adventurous upbringing, described by his loved ones as polite, calm, and curious. Mike had an enduring love for travel that he inherited from his father. Together, they had visited Iceland, Scotland, the Caribbean, and even sailed across the Atlantic Ocean on a 700-day voyage. His parents divorced during his childhood, but Mike maintained close ties with both. Suzanne later had a daughter named Maria, and Baron had a son named Daniel. Mike loved being a big brother. In July 2016, 16-year-old Mike decided to travel to Malta, trip he would take alone for the first time. His girlfriend was studying there, attending a language course, and Mike wanted to spend part of his summer vacation with her. Malta, an island nation in the Mediterranean, is known for its picturesque cliffs, turquoise beaches, and low crime rate. Despite his young age, Mike's parents agreed to the solo trip. They trusted him. He had traveled extensively, was responsible, and mature beyond his years. Mike arrived in Malta on July 8th and spent several days with his girlfriend in Valletta, the capital. As her course ended, she returned to Germany, but Mike decided to stay longer to continue exploring the island. His parents, Suzanne in Germany and Baron on vacation in Croatia, agreed to the extension. Mike moved to the Astra Hotel in Slima, a bustling coastal city, popular with tourists. On July 18, 2016, security footage from the Astra Hotel captured Mike leaving his room at 8:39 a.m. He spoke briefly with hotel staff at 9:10, returned to his room, then left again. At 9:55 a.m., he wore a blue t-shirt, carried a black backpack, and held his cell phone. Inside the backpack were his GoPro camera, a charger, documents, credit card, and some cash. Mike rented a blue and black Lombardo mountain bike from a nearby port and sent his father a voice message via WhatsApp at 10:11 a.m. In it, he mentioned cycling around the island, but noted the terrain was steep and he might have to push the bike. He promised to send a photo soon. That photo never came. It was the last time anyone heard from Mike Matscholt. His parents didn't worry immediately. They assumed he was busy sightseeing. But when Mike didn't return to Germany as scheduled on July 22nd, concern turned into fear. Suzanne and Maria waited at the airport. When he didn't arrive, Suzanne called his phone. It was turned off. She contacted the airline and learned Mike had never boarded the flight. Around 2 a.m. on July 23rd, Suzanne reported him missing. German authorities immediately contacted their Maltese counterparts, only to learn Mike had already been reported missing by the Astra Hotel on July 20th, when he failed to return for checkout or collect his belongings. The bike he rented had not been returned either. Baron flew to Malta with Daniel and joined the search. He kept in close contact with local authorities, who launched a search operation across the island. Flyers were distributed. Tourists were questioned. On July 24th, Interpol was brought into the investigation. Then, on July 26th, 8 days after Mike disappeared, the Maltese police received an anonymous tip. The caller claimed that Mike's body was at the bottom of the Dingley Cliffs, the island's highest point, popular with tourists for its sweeping views. The cliffs are near the Raby Catacombs, a location Mike had expressed interest in visiting. Search teams with sniffer dogs, medics, and emergency responders were deployed. Baron and Daniel arrived quickly. Journalists were already present. Hours later, Mike's body was found. He was lying lifeless beneath dense brush, hidden in a crevice roughly 98 feet below the cliff's edge. His mountain bike was located above, the body mangled, with flat tires and bent handlebars. The body was retrieved and sent for autopsy. Near him were his sunglasses and sneakers athlete. Mike was barefoot. His backpack, phone, GoPro, laptop, credit card, and money were all missing. Something strange was also found near the body: fresh hay, untouched by sun exposure, detached from a shoe sole. Since Mike was barefoot, the hay couldn't have come from him. When Barron asked a nearby farmer if he knew anything about it, the man acted nervous and uncooperative, insisting he knew nothing. The case took a disturbing turn. Mike's GoPro was especially important. He documented nearly every aspect of his trips. It could have offered crucial footage from the day he vanished. Barron distinctly remembered seeing the GoPro case attached to Mike's belt when his body was recovered. The lead investigator on site even acknowledged it. But the following day, all police officers involved denied that the GoPro or even its case was recovered. When Barron confronted the lead investigator again, she now denied having ever seen the camera case. Then, the police declared the death an accident. Mike had supposedly fallen while riding his bike along the cliffside trail, but the theory didn't add up. Mike's body was found in a position that suggested he fell backward, not forward. The location wasn't in the path of a straight fall, and an autopsy finalized a month later revealed something shocking. Mike had no broken bones, no fractured limbs, not even a scratch consistent with a violent cliffside impact. The coroner had originally told Barron that Mike broke his neck in 2 places and died instantly, but that too was false. No x-rays had been done at that point. A morgue employee later approached Barron and admitted that something didn't feel right. She confirmed Mike's body bore no injuries, consistent with a 98-foot fall onto rock. Even the damage to the mountain bike didn't match what one would expect from such a fall. The bike appeared as if it had been dropped or tampered with after the fact, perhaps to support a cover story. Then came a new twist. The forensic department handed Barron a camera, claiming it was Mike's, but it wasn't a GoPro. It was an outdated Canon, something Mike never used. Barron, Suzanne, and the rest of the Mansholt family were devastated, not just by Mike's death, but by the unsettling inconsistencies and what they perceived as a deliberate attempt by the Maltese police to obscure the truth. To this day, Mike's backpack, GoPro, and belongings remain missing. The exact circumstances of his death remain unexplained. As for the anonymous tip, the identity of the caller was never made public. Part 4. The mysterious death of Mike Mansholt. Along with the digital camera, the Maltese authorities handed over to Baron Mansholt. They also gave him a completely destroyed memory card. They claimed it had been found inside the camera, next to Mike's body. The Baron immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't Mike's camera. The model was outdated, and Mike had never used anything like it. To Baron, it seemed like a deliberate attempt to make him stop asking questions about the missing GoPro. By now, the Mansholt family had grown deeply suspicious of the Maltese police. Their lack of urgency, reluctance to share evidence, and disinterest in exploring foul play raised red flags. Baron started pressing the officers who could have taken his son's belongings. Oddly, some of them suggested that no Maltese local would do such a thing, hinting instead that a tourist might be responsible. The authorities also claimed they tried to pull location data from Mike's phone, but said that no records were available. Another dead end. Frustrated and grieving, Baron was ready to make formal accusations. But first, he needed to return to Germany to handle his son's funeral and the affairs that followed. Mike's body arrived in Germany on August 17, 2016, but what happened next only deepened the nightmare. Disturbing discoveries: the funeral home staff in Germany noticed something strange about Mike's body. It appeared deflated, almost hollow. Worse, the body hadn't been embalmed or prepared for burial. This wasn't just a bureaucratic oversight. It posed a significant problem. Without proper embalming, German forensic experts couldn't perform a second autopsy effectively. The body smelled strongly of decomposition, not of formaldehyde or other preservation chemicals. A police officer later remarked that airport personnel who handled the coffin had commented on how light it felt. Concerned by this, German authorities sent Mike's body to the Medical University of Hanover for analysis. What they found was chilling. Mike's body weighed only 16 kilograms, 35 pounds, shockingly light for a healthy teenage boy. Upon examination, it was discovered that nearly all of his internal organs were missing. His brain, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, kidneys, stomach, intestines even, the bladder and prostate were gone. Only small remnants of the spleen, diaphragm, and part of the colon remained. This alone was highly irregular. In most autopsies, organs are temporarily removed for examination and either preserved or returned to the body. If organs are kept, an official report must explain why. None of that happened here. Mike's body had been returned empty, a literal shell. Baron and Suzanne were devastated. In disbelief, Baron wrote to Maltese authorities, asking them to return Mike's organs so they could be buried properly. The response he received was beyond comprehension. A Maltese coroner claimed Mike's organs had been eaten by animals before his body was found. This explanation made no sense. The initial Maltese autopsy report had not mentioned any animal damage. There were no visible bite marks or scratches, and the body had been found beneath the cliffs, not in an area prone to scavengers. The public prosecutor's office of Oldenburg, the family resided officially, took over the case. What had begun as a tragic accident investigation had now escalated into a possible criminal case. German autopsy and forensic analysts. The forensic team at the University of Hanover requested the original autopsy report from Malta, but it never arrived. And with nearly all the organs missing, there was little the German pathologists could do. Still, they pressed on. A second autopsy was ordered, and this time, Maltese coroners were required to be present. Their cooperation, however, remained limited. No signs of rodent activity were found on the body except for one superficial bite on the neck and an abrasion on the forearm. The theory that animals had consumed Mike's organs was completely ruled out. Critically, the second autopsy confirmed that the body had not been embalmed. As a result, any remaining forensic evidence had deteriorated beyond use. This failure meant that the true cause of death could never be determined. The German team also found no broken bones, no fractures, no bruising, no soft tissue damage, not even broken ribs or spinal injury. In fact, the entire spine was intact. Even internal bleeding was considered unlikely, as there were no signs of trauma. For someone who supposedly fell from a 30-meter 98-foot cliff, the lack of injury was baffling. The conclusion, a fall from such a height was virtually impossible under the physical condition of the body, and since no organs remained, the theory of asphyxiation, possibly from strangulation, couldn't be ruled out, but also couldn't be confirmed. The hyoid bone, often fractured during strangulation, was missing. So was the brain, which could have revealed signs of cerebral trauma. Too many, the missing organs now appeared deliberate, not accidental. Still, Maltese authorities stood by their version. Mike had died in a tragic cycling accident. The same team that failed to preserve the body and couldn't provide a clear timeline had now declared the case closed. Among those involved in the original Maltese autopsy was Professor Mario Scari, Malta's chief forensic doctor, a highly decorated figure in the country. He was present when the body was found and even led the autopsy. But when journalists and Baron demanded answers, Scari only responded once via email, reiterating that the organs had been eaten by rodents and the brain had liquefied in the sun. The German forensic team called this explanation scientifically absurd, noting that in far hotter climates, autopsies are routinely performed without such outcomes. The temperatures in Malta that day were around 40 degrees Celsius, hardly extreme for a European summer. Legal battles and stonewalling. Baron returned to Malta in November 2017, trying to meet with the detectives and prosecutors, but no one would speak to him. He filed a legal request to access the full case file, but was told that the presiding judge was known for slow approvals anyway. Eventually, with help from a German diplomat stationed in Malta, Baron received access to the case file, but it was incomplete. Key documents were missing: the full autopsy report, photographs from the recovery site, and witness testimonies had vanished. In January 2018, after diplomatic pressure from Germany and media scrutiny, the Maltese government reluctantly reopened the case. But when a new judge reviewed it, the conclusion remained unchanged. Mike died from a fall. No further investigation would take place. German officials strongly disagreed. They cited the many contradictions, the missing organs, and the lack of injuries as evidence that something was being hidden. Yet without physical evidence, their investigation had hit a dead end. Theories and speculation, with no satisfying conclusion. A flood of theories emerged. The most prominent include organ trafficking. Some believe Mike was kidnapped by traffickers while cycling in a remote area, and his organs were surgically removed. His body was later dumped to mimic an accidental fall. Supporters of this theory point to the missing organs, the stitched-up body, and the strategic disposal. Robbery turned murder. Another theory suggests that Mike was killed by opportunistic thieves who stole his valuables and murdered him, perhaps by strangulation. His body may have been moved to the cliff site, and the evidence like the hyoid bone and brain deliberately removed to obstruct the investigation. Accidental fall and theft. After death, some theorize Mike did fall, and his body was later found by passers-by who stole his belongings. But this doesn't explain the missing organs or lack of injury. Suicide, a theory quickly discarded. Mike was described as happy, full of plans, and deeply in love. There were no indications of depression or suicidal ideation. Some even speculate that the farmer near where Mike's body was found might have been involved. His evasive behavior during questioning made Baron suspicious, but nothing has ever been proven. The aftermath. Baron eventually stopped pursuing answers. Exhausted by stonewalling and bureaucracy, he focused on healing his family. He believes that the truth about Mike's death may never come out. A German newspaper that followed the case from the beginning tried to revisit it, but when they contacted Maltese officials, they refused to comment as if the entire case had been buried. To this day, the death of Mike Mansholt remains one of the most troubling and mysterious cases in modern European history. Whether it was a tragic accident or something far darker, the questions still hang heavy in the air, and the silence from those in charge only deepens the suspicion. Part 5. The vanishing of Leslie and Kevin. To this day, the Maltese authorities stand by their official conclusion that Mike died from a tragic fall off a cliff. Any suggestion otherwise, they insist, is simply a conspiracy theory. But as we move from Malta to a quiet corner of southwestern France, we uncover another disturbing mystery, one just as riddled with gaps, contradictions, and haunting silence. In the early morning hours between November 25th and 26th, 2022, Leslie Hurlbeck and her boyfriend, 21-year-old Kevin Trompat, vanished without a trace. At the time, the young couple was staying in the small commune of Prohec, a tranquil village of just over 2,000 residents, nestled in the Deux-Sevres department of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region of France, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, a place people go to escape the chaos of the city, not where two healthy young adults and a dog simply disappear. The last known movements, Leslie and Kevin had only been dating for a few weeks, but their bond seemed strong. They arrived in around 5:30 p.m. on November 25th, planning to spend a quiet weekend visiting friends. First, they stopped by the house of Tom Trullet, a friend who had offered them his place for the night. They dropped off some of their belongings and Leslie's dog, Onyx, before heading over to another friend's house, Nicholas Renew. Just 10 meters, about 33 feet down the same street, Tom had introduced them. He was a mutual friend of both Leslie and Kevin and had left for a party that evening in the nearby town of La Crochet. That left the couple alone for the evening. Later that night, Leslie and Kevin went to Nicholas's place. They spent several hours there, just chatting, likely relaxing. Around 2:30 or 3 a.m., Nicholas offered them a place to stay for the night, but the couple politely declined, saying they would return to Tom's place next door, with Onyx in tow. They stepped out of the house and disappeared forever, early. Investigation and missing persons reports the moment both families lost contact with Leslie and Kevin. Alarm bells rang. It was completely unlike them to vanish, and both had been excited about the weekend plans. Their families immediately reported them missing. Police soon discovered the timeline. The couple had been at Tom's house, then spent time with Nicholas, and intended to return just 33 feet down the road but never arrived. Investigators questioned both men. Tom claimed he had no idea what happened. He had been at a party and returned home to find the house empty. The couple, their belongings, and Onyx were gone. The only item left behind was a jacket, which police collected as evidence. Nicholas, meanwhile, confirmed that he was the last person to see them. He stated that around 2:30 a.m., they left his house with the dog. From his porch, he watched them walk off into the darkness, who were Leslie and Kevin. Leslie was described as warm, social, and full of life. She was extremely close to her twin brother, loved animals, and ran a small painting company called LH Painter, named after her initials. She had previously been married, but separated earlier that year. In June 22, Kevin was quieter, someone who found peace in nature. He loved hiking and animals, and had recently bought a Mercedes Sprinter van, which he was converting into a mobile work vehicle. Kevin had endured a difficult childhood. His father was arrested when he was young, and he had to grow up quickly to support himself. The couple had met just weeks earlier, in October 2022, and were clearly in the honeymoon stage of their relationship, according to Kevin's mother. The two had planned to spend just one day in Prohec before heading to Bordeaux, a nearby tourist city. Their trip was brief, casual land, yet it would end in the most tragic way. Growing suspicions at first, police considered the possibility that the couple had left voluntarily. Maybe they'd gone off on an adventure, or maybe they were running from something. But that theory fell apart quickly. Back at their homes, investigators found no signs of preparation for a longer trip. Leslie's white Peugeot partner van, used for her business, was still parked in town. Kevin's Mercedes van, too, had been untouched. Even more worrying, Leslie's dog Onyx, whom she adored and would never abandon, was missing too. Then came a startling revelation from Kevin's stepmother, Corinne Pratt. She told police she had recently delivered 10,000 euros in cash to Kevin while he was staying in Prohec. The money was to buy a car from an acquaintance. But when she saw him, Kevin looked uneasy, nervous. Even he admitted to her that he believed men in a car were following him. That was the last time anyone saw Kevin and Leslie alive. Cell phone signals and dead ends. As the investigation deepened, authorities tracked cell phone activity linked to the couple. 12 hours after their disappearance, Leslie's phone briefly pinged from the nearby city of Niort, about 14 kilometers 8.7 miles from Prohec. Police searched the area, but found nothing. Then, 3 days later, Kevin's phone also emitted a signal, this time from Furs, located more than 80 kilometers away. Again, police combed the area. Nothing. Breakthrough at the recycling center. The case appeared to be going cold until December 8th. when a worker at a recycling facility in Perrine made a shocking discovery. He found Kevin's road safety certificate tossed in a bin alongside other personal items, clothes, painting supplies, Leslie's makeup bag, and a box of shotgun cartridges similar to those Kevin used for spearfishing. Everything was confirmed to belong to the couple. This discovery shattered the theory that they had vanished by choice. Why would they dispose of such important belongings, randomly, and far from Prohec? A kidnapping investigation is launched on December 12, 2022. French authorities officially opened a kidnapping investigation. Search efforts intensified. Divers scanned lakes and rivers. Cadaver dogs combed the forests, and volunteers joined daily searches. Despite all this, nothing new surfaced till January 2nd, 2023, when a decaying dog's body was found in a remote area. The size and fur matched onyx, but decomposition made confirmation impossible. To Leslie's family, it was devastating. She loved that dog like a child. If Onyx was dead, it was unthinkable that Leslie and Kevin were still alive. Desperate families. Community searches in the following days. Corinne Pratt, Kevin's stepmother, organized a massive search using social media. Over 100 volunteers combed the fields, guided by the vague directions of a psychic who claimed the couple would be found near Prahec.still-nothing. On January 14th. Kevin's father organized another large-scale search, but journalists present described it as chaotic, lacking coordination, and ultimately fruitless. Unanswered questions. More than a year has passed since Leslie, Kevin, and Onyx walked out of Nicholas Renew's house and into the dark. Their families remain shattered, desperate for answers. Despite the recovered belongings, the cell phone signals, and the 10,000 euros in cash that vanished along with them, the truth remains elusive. No bodies, no arrests, no official cause, just silence. What really happened that night on the quiet street in Prohec? Was this a case of robbery gone wrong? A targeted attack? Or something even more sinister? The case of Leslie Hurlbeck and Kevin Trompet remains one of France's most confounding modern mysteries. Part 6. Buried in silence, the murders of Leslie Hurlbeck and Kevin Trompet. The countryside of Prohec had returned to a quiet, cold stillness in the winter months that followed the disappearance of Leslie Hurlbeck, Kevin Trompet, and Leslie's loyal dog Onyx. Despite nationwide media attention and an outpouring of volunteer support, the mystery remained unresolved until the morning of February 28, 2023, when everything changed. The first arrest, cracks begin to show. That morning, French authorities arrived at the home of Tom Trullet, the man who had lent Leslie and Kevin his house the night they disappeared. Tom, a longtime friend of both victims, was staying at his father's residence at the time of his arrest. Tom had inserted himself into the case early on, even cooperating with police, but investigators had grown increasingly suspicious. His statements had changed across multiple interviews. First, he said he'd handed Leslie and Kevin the keys and left for a party in another town, claiming he never saw them again. But then came the digital evidence. Text messages recovered from Leslie's phone, timestamped 2:53 a.m., told a different story. In them, Leslie told Tom she was feeling very ill after taking a synthetic drug, a drug Tom had given her. Phone location data sealed the suspicion. Contrary to his claims, Tom's device pinged right there in Prohec at the very time Leslie and Kevin vanished. He had lied, and if he lied, what else was he hiding? A past connection and possible motive. Digging into Tom's personal history, police uncovered something even more disturbing. Tom had once had a romantic relationship with Leslie. Though short-lived, those close to him said Tom never got over it. When Leslie later asked him to introduce her to Kevin, the man who would become her boyfriend, Tom was reportedly bitter. Investigators now had not only a timeline and a lie, but a motive. Was this crime driven by jealousy, obsession, or something even more sinister? And then came the second arrest. More arrests and a break in the case on March 1st, 2023. Police arrested 22-year-old Nathan Badgie, a known associate of Tom's. Nathan lived less than 300 meters from the recycling bin where some of Kevin and Leslie's belongings had been discovered. The very next day, March 2nd, a third man, 23-year-old Enzo Shalat, another of Tom's friends, was taken into custody. When all three were questioned separately, the pieces of the puzzle finally began to fit together. On March 3rd, police found the body of Kevin Schmidt buried in a remote field near the town of Puervo, over 90 kilometers from Prohek. A day later, on March 4th, the body of Leslie Hurlbeck was discovered in a forest near Versen, just 14 kilometers from where Kevin had been buried. Both had been missing for over 3 months. The autopsies, the autopsy results were devastating. The medical examiner confirmed both Kevin and Leslie had suffered multiple blunt force injuries, deep lacerations, and trauma consistent with iron bars, knives, and possibly a machete or sword. The cause of death for both was determined to be massive internal and external bleeding. It was a savage, personal, and deliberate attack. Leslie showed no signs of sexual assault, refuting earlier suspicions, but the violence inflicted on both was undeniable. As for Onyx the dog, who never left Leslie's side, the suspects claimed they had simply abandoned him by the roadside. Police found this unlikely. The public had been saturated with images of Onyx. If he had been wandering loose, someone would have found him. Authorities now believe the decomposing body of a dog discovered on January 2nd was most likely Onyx. The funeral and a nation mourns the discoveries devastated the families. Even though they had feared the worst, they had clung to hope. On March 16, Kevin Trompat was laid to rest in Niort. 2 days later, Leslie's funeral was held in La Rochelle. Both services were filled with sorrow, disbelief, and public outrage. France mourned alongside them. 2 more arrests. The plot unfolds, then came 2 more arrests. On April 12, 2023, police apprehended Stephen Matthew, 24, and McCall Elzadi, 22, both connected to Tom. With all 5 men in custody, authorities were able to reconstruct what happened the night Kevin and Leslie were murdered. The timeline of Tarafta leaving Nicholas Renou's house at approximately 3 a.m. Leslie and Kevin returned to Tom Trulett's house to sleep, but Tom wasn't there. That's when Leslie messaged him about feeling unwell after taking the synthetic drug. Tom arrived. Minutes later, not hours later, as he'd previously claimed. They drank, talked, and used more drugs. Meanwhile, in a van outside, Nathan, Enzo, Stephen, and McCall waited for Tom's signal. Inside the van were weapons, hammers, iron bars, knives, and even a sword. Tom sent a message. The 4 men stormed into the house. Kevin was struck repeatedly with a hammer by Nathan. Leslie was restrained by Tom. The couple and Onyx were then forced into the van, along with their belongings. From there, the group drove to a remote location. What happened next was brutal. Kevin was beaten again, possibly to death, by Tom. Those suspect testimonies differ. Some claim Tom led the assault. Others said Nathan delivered the fatal blows, and Leslie. According to statements, Tom used a sword to kill her. The victims were buried, separately, Kevin in a field, Leslie in a forest, though some accounts suggest the bodies were temporarily hidden near Prohek for 2 days before being transported to final burial sites. Later, the men returned to Prohek to clean the van, dispose of evidence, and sanitize Tom's house. The motive: jealousy, money, and revenge. Police believe the motive was a toxic mix of resentment, rejection, and money. Tom reportedly told police that Kevin was a drug dealer who owed him 30,000 euros, and that he was tired of being pressured to repay debts. He also claimed other members of the group owed Kevin money. When asked about the 10,000 euros Kevin had with him, Tom said the group split the money among themselves, but Kevin's family vehemently denied the drug dealer allegations, calling them a deliberate attempt to defame the victims and minimize the crime. Retaliation and family fallout grief soon turned to fury. Kevin's father, Guy Trompette, had recently been released from prison when the bodies were found. He organized a memorial march in Kevin and Leslie's honor, attended by hundreds. But behind the scenes, Guy was crumbling. He became severely depressed, lost over 12 kilograms, and began relying on medication. On May 3, 2023, Guy was arrested of attempting to orchestrate a revenge plot against the 5 suspects. Police said he had offered $100,000 to anyone who could kill them in prison. Guy denied the charges, insisting it was a friend who made the offer without his knowledge. Though initially convicted and sentenced to 18 months in prison, his conviction was later overturned. But he wasn't the only one arrested. 77-year-old Marita Garcia, an aunt of Kevin's, was also taken into custody after posting a chilling message online. "The police better catch the bastards before I do. If I find them first, I'll deliver their body parts in a suitcase." Police later connected Marita to a crime ring from the 1980s and 90s, including a 1995 murder where a dismembered body was found in a suitcase, eerily similar to her threat, though she was released after being questioned. It cast a long shadow over the grieving family, a shocking legal twist on March 18, 2025. 2 years after his arrest, Nathan Badgie was released from custody due to a procedural error. The court had sent a hearing notice to the wrong email address, which meant Nathan's lawyer wasn't present at a key detention hearing. His defense argued the detention was unlawful, and the court agreed. Though released, Nathan now lives under strict conditions, including a ban on leaving his city. He remains free while awaiting trial. As for Tom, Enzo, Stephen, and Mikal, they remain in custody. Their trials are expected to begin later this year. Under French law, they face life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Epilogue: Kevin and Leslie were young, full of dreams, and had plans for the future trips, business growth, even a life together. But in the early hours of November 26, 2022, their lives were stolen by someone they trusted, and for others who followed a plan built on greed, bitterness, and cruelty. And as their families continue to seek justice, one question lingers: how could something so monstrous happen on a quiet street in a small village, where nothing ever happens until it does?